When you see an elephant or a rhino from a few meters away for the first time, and you look at it in its eyes, you could see the whole universe.
We want our kids to see these animals, and this is not a thing where it's just South Africans or people in Zambia or Zimbabwe. This affects all of us, and we don't want to be the generation that has to answer to our kids who are seeing rhinos and elephants and all these beautiful animals and lions in these books that we grew up looking at and looking in our faces and asking us why they're not here anymore.
The current rhino poaching crisis began in 2008, when the number of rhinos killed for their horns throughout Africa began to rise sharply. In recent years, the rhino has become the face of extinction on the continent. But while watching this, please remember the hundreds of other species that are quietly following the same path towards disappearance. South Africa has been hit the hardest, as it is home to Kruger National Park, which holds the largest population of rhinos in the world. To kind of put it into perspective, Kruger is about the size of New Jersey, and between 2007 and 2014, rhino poaching in South Africa has skyrocketed, an increase of 9,000%. This crisis hasn't stopped. Since 2013, Kruger's rhino population has dropped by 60%. Poaching is driven by both domestic and international factors. Globally, the crisis is fueled by demand for rhino horn in parts of Asia, especially China and Vietnam. Despite an international trade ban since 1977, rhino horn continues to sell on the black market for huge sums. At its peak, up to $65,000, making it more valuable than gold or cocaine. Domestically, the issue is complex. It's rooted in poverty, lack of education, and widespread corruption, even within government institutions. Organized crime syndicates play a major role coordinating poaching operations, paying bribes, and threatening those who stand in their way. In recent years, poaching numbers have started to decline. This trend can be attributed to two main factors. Tragically, there are now fewer than 2,000 rhinos left in Kruger National Park, reducing opportunities for poachers. But it also reflects the tireless efforts of brave individuals who risk their lives day after day to protect South Africa's wildlife. The front line of this effort consists of three key forces: rangers, canine units, and air support. But without the critical funding of NGOs and nonprofit organizations, which provide funding, training, and resources, these efforts would be unsustainable, and much of Africa's wildlife will likely have vanished by now in many regions. In this documentary, you'll meet the people behind the mission, those who dedicate their lives to protecting rhinos. I had the incredible opportunity to join them, thanks to Soldiers for Wildlife, and witness their work up close. Enjoy.
The number one problem with rhinos and rhino poaching is the rhinos themselves. They have extremely long gestation periods. So that means on average, a rhino, it takes 16 to 18 months for a southern white rhino, as an example, to be able to birth a calf. On top of that, female mother rhinos typically stay with their calves for up to 3 years as part of that development process until they eventually kick them out to go up on their own. So they're not having babies every year, and even after they do have a calf, they're not immediately reproducing as well. So you pull the trigger on one rhino, you could see the vast impact that has within the populations.
Once you put a heavy or high demand on a wildlife part like rhino horn, for instance, and that demand is in a country that's not stabilized and is infiltrated with corruption, that creates a real big problem. So it's not just, and yes, this is about wildlife, but it's also about resources. And these nations will wipe this continent clean and leave Africa with nothing left. And then the continent of Africa will just turn into a hotbed for organized crime, terror units, the whole thing.
So one of the biggest things that we do as part of anti-poaching is daily patrols. And what we're doing is we are looking to pick up tracks. So obviously, if we haven't picked up anyone on a camera trap or heard gunshots or visual, we need to try and find that these guys are inside here. And the easiest way to do that is to pick up their tracks, because obviously if there's 3 guys walking here, they're not flying, they need to walk. You just, if he walks across the road, you might be able to, you can see these footprints, right? Fairly easy. So obviously to a trained eye, that's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So you would think, okay, you're looking for those footprints. Those days are gone. Interestingly, if I am on patrol and I see tracks like this where they're not giving a shit and not hiding their tracks, I know there's a dead rhino inside. Because a lot of the time, when they've shot and they've got their horn, they know the job is done, they just want to get the fuck out of here. They know you're going to find the carcass and know they were inside, so they just fucking go for it, cut a big hole in the fence, and they're not careful. So when they get to a road, they're going to be really careful with their tracks. So like simply step on the rock, so to not leave track, and then do it across the road. They'll walk along the road and look for a place where there's lots of rocks to cross, or elephant poo, or rock, like a branch or something. But that's very mediocre. What they will do is they might get to a road. They're always carrying backpacks. They will just drag the backpack over their tracks. Not that you won't see the drag mark, but to the untrained eye, you might think, oh, it was a hyena that dragged an impala across the road. That's what it looks like. So they trying to disguise their tracks as something else. One of the most effective methods that these guys are using is they are not so much doing anything to just hide their tracks like physically, but they are changing what they do with their shoes. So they will wear, very common tactic is they'll wear a like 4 or 5 pairs of thick, like long socks over their shoes, and that just makes a bigger surface area so that they're leaving no pressure on the ground, and it's pretty much invisible. Even to walk across this road, you can't see anything, and it takes a very trained eye to be able to pick that up. You're looking for like a tiny little flat mark in the, like for example, my guys, like if they saw that in the road, 1, 2, 3, 4, they would look and they would go and would bring the dog to check or whatever. So you're not looking for a boot print. They have put animal hooves on the bottom of their shoes, so you think it's an animal. They put foam under their shoes, like from a bed, from a mattress. That's the same principle as the socks. So in order to combat that, so you see this road, it's relatively hard, it's got a lot of rocks and stuff. It's quite difficult, even if I walk normally, you're not leaving the most obvious tracks. So what we do is we actually prepare the road to make it more conducive to tracks being showed up, and that's what we call a detection zone. I would get a grader, get it really smooth, I'll drag really big tires and try and get as many of these rocks out. And I'd get my guys to patrol this road, and what we do is after every patrol we would come with light tires and drag it over where we've patrolled, because we know no one's crossed, so now we're going to clear all the tracks. If I did patrol at 8 o'clock, finish at 10, and I dragged the detection zone, drag the detection zone, then I know timelines, right? I know timelines as in this was dragged 4 hours ago, the tracks are over the detection zone, so we know it's within the last 4 hours. So it also gives us timelines, which is very nice. Also, you want the same guys patrolling the detection zone all the time, because they get to know the area. So they will pick up stuff like, this rock was not here yesterday. Sometimes on a detection zone, you will get poachers that will spend 15-20 minutes crossing this road. That's how careful they are. They don't leave a thing. They do exactly like that. They will walk and then they just slowly hit their cap or a branch or whatever, and it just disappears. So all you see is a disturbance.
Some of the key components is the implementation of tracking dogs or man tracking dogs, right? They have been vital in anti-poaching efforts. Since the implementation of dogs, as an example, the rates of detention have gone up 60-70%, right? So the dog programs are extremely effective. We're seeing tremendous results there.
For dogs, this is brilliant. I want you to anti-track as much as possible, please. So with dogs, they're following your scent. So we call them tracking dogs. They're not visually following tracks. They're using your scent. As you stand here, you are dropping scent like this. You must visualize it like smoke. Is that it's just constantly just coming, or steam, constantly coming off you, and that is what your dog is tracking. So it's very interesting. If you go on a 4-hour-old track and there's a bit of wind, you might get to an area where you can see the tracks clearly and it's there, but your dog is walking down there. And it's because the scent of blood and it's got caught in those bushes there, and the dog will walk there. So that's how, you know, we're all dropping scent. As you said, the more time you spend here is the more scent you are dropping.
Right.
So that's why, like, when guys sleep in the bush and they're sitting under a bush for 12 hours, it creates a scent pool, and as a handler that's very difficult to deal with. Because your dog from 200 meters away will be like, this whole place stinks like somebody, and they got to learn to walk through it, and it's highly problematic in terms of a contact, because you want your dog to be on it when you hit the contact, but at proximity, it might just, you'll be walking around the bush for 10 minutes and the oak's right there, which brings up the issue of an ambush, so which is why you should wear your vest and all of that stuff. A lot of guys don't wear vests here because they're like, oh, it's hot. I'd rather be hot than dead.
So a tracking dog is trained to follow the smell of ground disturbance. Like when we walk, we micro-plow the ground, we stamp the ground, and we injure plants, which then release the sap. That creates a scent different from next to the steps, in combination with human scent. So whatever picture is on that track, it doesn't matter to the dog, he will follow any human track available. So those dogs, because also of the ground disturbance, so it's basically a highway of scent and ground disturbance, what the tracking dog is following. Because of that combination, the tracking dog is very close to the actual spoor.
And then we do, like today, I've been involved in an anti-poaching operation. We had 3 poachers in the Kruger Park. I was called out. We deploy rangers on the ground. We deploy canines, free-running pack dogs. We've got line dogs, and we are the aerial command and control platform. So this little aeroplane, we sit up there. We do the aerial command. We've got helicopters on the ground. We've got canine units, and we've got rangers, and all of them work together. There's not one silver bullet. You can't just have rangers. You can't just have a canine unit. You can't just have an aircraft. All of them have to work in tandem. And it really does work well.
I mean, there's so many thousands of people that have given up their life and maybe even a comfortable future to be minimalistic and to struggle and to, you know, pursue conservation, because it's sad. And, you know, even at the end of the day, if we're some of the last generations that gets to be a part of this, then at least I knew that I was on the right side of the fence. The biggest problem is obviously corruption, but it's getting ahead of the curve. You know, right now, almost all measures are used in a reactive way and not a proactive way. And that's really difficult to deal with, because, you know, it's the things on the media that are getting the outside money, and a lot of things in the media get attention because they're these, you know, I say this term, but it's real. It's like the sexy stuff, and that's being reactive. That's doing a dehorning. That's getting in helicopters. That's out with the dogs. But, you know, how are we really making, this trend, go away and getting ahead of the problem, and ahead of the problem is stabilizing communities and working with people here on the ground and promoting education and infrastructure, while still, making sure that these indigenous communities are keeping their cultures. I mean, the community thing gets overlooked a lot. If we don't, you can't just combat wildlife. You can't just combat wildlife crime and be in the field. You have to simultaneously be working with the people, develop relationships with these people and cultures, offer alternative methods to livelihoods. These are things that without putting a stop to that and without helping them, we're just running in circles. We're going to be dealing with this forever if we don't help the people. And we should want to help the people. There's a lot of really good people that just need an avenue of escape. There's a lot of poachers, and that's the thing too, is here, now I'm getting into good territory, all poachers aren't bad, and we know that. Some are just doing this because they're poor and they're just simply trying to feed their family. So there's a number of different ways that that do give me hope for the future, and it has to. Like it's one of those things you hold on to. Like this better work, because we're running out of energy and time and money. You know what I mean? It's conservation's a money pit. We throw all of our money into it, and what we get out is maybe a couple extra days, but how often do we throw money in and then like the next day it's like, well, this rhino's dead now? Like it or not, corruption's going to exist out here, and political change takes generations and a lot of time, and these animals don't have time. So right now it is literally up to people from the outside, NGOs and nonprofits, to step in here and focus on long-lasting solutions and not just being reactive. We have to be reactive to save what we have left right now, and we could utilize that in a good way to be proactive, but we must try and get ahead of the problem.
The butterfly effects that happen when you take a species out of an ecosystem, right? It ripples. It has consequences that affect hundreds of animals and species, right? So I think you should care about all of them. We should be stewards of our planet. I think in my lifetime that the goal is to be able to contain and control it. People's greed and the ability to make a quick buck, it will never go away. It's almost in human nature. So I'm not naive enough to think that we'd be able to completely stop it. I am hopeful that through education, through community outreach, that we'd be able to create new markets, right? Continue to drive conservation experiences, ecotourism, and educate the local communities and provide jobs for the local communities so that they're not as swayed to go out and poach these animals. An end goal is to make sure that rhinos and elephants and pangolins all exist by the time that we have grandchildren.